Time once again for the Red, Gold, and Bold. With you as always, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, Soren Petro with you. We're talking Andy Reid. Where is his place in history? Where does he rank all time? How much did 2025 hurt his case for wherever he's going to ultimately end up? His best strengths, weaknesses. What does he have to overcome? How far can he move up the list? How important is 26 to his place in history? Is he capable of adapting his offense? If he's going to keep moving up, they're going to have to adjust on offense. We'll predict where we think his career is ultimately going to end up, what he'll ultimately rank at. We're doing it right here, right now on the Red, Gold, and Bold.
You are listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth, breaking down the Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro. Jeff Chadiha is a senior columnist and on-air personality for the NFL Network and NFL.com. Sam McDowell is a columnist for the Kansas City Star. Soren Petro is the afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are the hosts of the Best Chiefs podcast, Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, and Soren Petro.
Thank you very much, Curtis. We do appreciate it. Off and running here on a Friday. Remember, if you catch us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation. Fridays, 10 a.m., Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. Those are Central Times for people that are new to the Red, Gold, and Bold. And guys, let's talk about Andy Reid's place in history. Seven conference championships, six conference championships. I'm sorry. Six conference championships, 5 in Kansas City, 1 in Philadelphia, 3 Super Bowl championships, moving way up the wins list over the last couple of years when it comes to regular season, overall wins. His right now 279 regular season wins are the 4th most of all time. His combined win total has him 4th most with 307 when you throw in the playoffs. He's one of, I think it's 13 NFL coaches with a 600 win percentage or better in the postseason. A lot of accomplishments. Let's just start with where we think he is right now on the all-time list, Sam. Where would you put Andy Reid on your all-time list right here?
I've got him 5th. I'll say this is a tough exercise because one of the things that you're judging is different eras, and it's just much more difficult in today's era. I mean, not only are there literally more teams and therefore a longer shot to win a Super Bowl, but you don't get to keep the band together anymore the way that you used to. So 5th is, I think, as low as I would go. Do you want me to just go through the
what do you got? Let's see your list.
I've got Bill Belichick 1 because of the reasons I just mentioned. He's got 6 titles, 9 appearances. Both are the best when you just take Super Bowl titles. As an aside, he also coached Tom Brady in that first year. Like, he's the one who noticed that Tom Brady had what it took to play. I realize that in the aftermath of all this, it seems like Tom Brady is the primary reason they're good. But, man, he mastered, like, running the salary cap, signing veterans after their prime, letting others go who people thought were in their prime. And the defenses were just consistently terrific. I've got Don Shula, number 2, most wins ever, 172 2 games above 500, which is clearly the best ever. Only undefeated team in history. First team to play in 3 straight. The playoff record is obviously the knock on him, 19-17 in the playoffs. I got Vince Lombardi, number 3, 5 titles in 10 seasons. The one that I think might be a little bit of a wild card, I put Bill Walsh, number 4, because he has the greatest coaching tree in NFL history. Yeah. And people are still using his offense, including here in Kansas City. Like, he won 3 Super Bowls, but I think you could argue that he's indirectly responsible for more Super Bowls than any other coach. And then I've got Andy Reid 5.
Okay, that's interesting. Let's just put it all on the table, and then we'll compare and contrast and go over what's different. Jeff, what are you rocking for? First of all, where do you got Andy Reid? How far down does he go? And then let's talk about who's in front of him.
He's 10 on my list, and I agree with Sam that it's a really hard list. Yeah, and I'll give you the reasons why, and it'll make sense for you. One, Bill Belichick, for all the reasons Sam said. And I do agree that whatever you think about how Tom Brady helped Bill Belichick had to find Tom Brady. He wasn't a first-round pick like Patrick Mahomes. He wasn't even on the depth chart high enough to be considered a guy who was going to be a player in this league after his first year. So,
and he wasn't even great those first couple of years either, exactly. Jeff, and he stuck with them.
Exactly. Bill Belichick had to find him, identify him, develop him, create a system for him to win. Had to have the nerve to replace. And Drew Bledsoe was the starting quarterback.
Sorry to interrupt your thing twice, but I do want to, because I think some of our commenters are probably going to say he won the Super Bowl. I'm just saying, look at his numbers. Like, he definitely wasn't the reason they won that first one.
Yeah, no, and so I think that he deserves credit for that. And also, he was a phenomenal, maybe one of the best defensive mind, if not the best defensive mind in the history of the league. And so for me, he's number one for that reason. I went Vince Lombardi too. Vince Lombardi still has the highest winning percentage in the playoffs all time, 90% of his games. He won 5 championships. He went to 3, and he won 3 in a row with Green Bay. People forget how dominant he was, and the reason why they have his name is the Lombardi Trophy is named for him. The Super Bowl winning trophy is named for him. So there's a reason for
it's
that.
Not for Michael Lombardi?
No, believe it or not, no. Believe it or not, no. Bill Walsh was 3 on my list. You called him a wild card. I think Bill Walsh's influence, the things he did over the course of his career as far as innovating the passing game, turning the Niners from a 2-win team when he showed up into a team of the 80s. You can't underestimate that. You're right. The impact they had on so many different coaches and so many different philosophies. Outside of Sid Gilman, I don't know if anybody else has done more for offensive football in this league. Don Shula was 4th on my list for all the reasons you said. Only 2 losing seasons in 33 years. People don't remember that about him. He's not higher because I think a lot of those wins late came when his team was not playing great. And he stuck around a long time after they went to the Super Bowl with Dan Marino in '85 and never got back there. So for me, it's like he kind of padded his stats late. Paul Brown is 5 on my list, 7 championships, the greatest innovator in the game. Scouting changed when he came around. Film study became a thing. Face masks, I think that matters for me when you're talking about just coaching in general. I mean, he was a guy who had all types of different impacts. George Halas is 6, Papa Bear, 2nd all time in wins still. We talk about Andy and Bill Belichick, but George Halas has had that stature for a long time. 7 is Chuck Noll. 4-0 in Super Bowls. 8 is Joe Gibbs. 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks, none of whom were big-time talents. 9 is Tom Landry, and 10 is Andy Reid.
Wow, Tom Landry. Okay.
And I'll give you Tom Landry's 29 seasons, 20 consecutive winning seasons, 12 division titles, 18 playoff berths, 2 Super Bowls, wins, 5 total Super Bowls, and he created the 4-3 defense. Andy Reid's not higher on my list because Andy Reid has not created anything. That's a big, and Andy Reid was not in this conversation until Patrick Mahomes showed up. So Andy Reid's not going on a rocket ship into my top 5 because he had Patrick Mahomes and had a great run the last. To be 10 on this list is pretty impressive.
Well, I will say that there's not a name in there to sneeze at. Like I will tell you, being behind any one of those guys, I have no problem with, and you can make a great case for all of them. So this isn't one. I'm sure there's some of the folks right now. I'm seeing it in the chat room that are like, what 10? You gotta be kidding me! Like you can always, I do think this exercise. It's good to go ahead and have your list because this exercise is like doing a top 25 poll. And when I have a vote and I do it, and somebody's like, I can't believe you have my team. My team's better than that team. Like they should be. Like, well, what's your 25? Well, no, I'm just saying this. I go, well, you can't say that unless you rank the whole 25. So you can't really get upset. I would encourage people to go ahead and make your list wherever you've got Andy Reid. Make your list and tell me where he's at, and then we can talk about it. But if you don't have your list, and since Jeff went 10 deep, probably you should go 10 deep. And explain yourself as to why Andy Reid would be ahead of any of these guys. I'll just give you my list real quick, and then we can talk about some of the differences there. But I go Bill Belichick 1. I actually go Joe Gibbs number 2. I go Vince Lombardi number 3, and I go Andy Reid number 4. I've got him at number 4 on my list. And I will tell you, Belichick, 7 championships. You're right. The first 3 were about Belichick. The last 3 were about Brady, but Belichick wasn't in the way. That's for sure. So he gets all credit for the 6. Just master of the salary cap, master of the defensive scheme, the tape breakdown. I mean, Belichick's number 1. 2, Joe Gibbs, because of what you said. I think it's the most underplayed. I think he's the most underrated head coach in the history of the NFL. And I've always said in the past, I don't know where Joe Gibbs ranks, but I know he's on the Mount Rushmore. In other words, he'll always be in my top 4 because of 3 championships with 3 different quarterbacks, and none of them are Hall of Famers. None of them are Hall of Famers. It's amazing. If you don't think he's good, he's gone on to then just run championship NASCAR teams too. Okay, here, let me go over here. I'll figure this sport out, and I'll do it with a way less bank account than some of the other big NASCAR teams, and he's won championships there as well. He's a genius at that as well. 3 is Vince Lombardi for just the sheer dominance. I mean, I do think it's much harder to win today than it was then, but he didn't just win; he dominated, and it was. He was a hard one. I thought about Andy Reid at 3. And when we talk about, what Andy Reid can still do and those kind of things here in a little bit, I'll get into it. I think Andy Reid can move by Vince Lombardi, because at one point I had him 3, but I'm like, no, I'm going to go Lombardi 3 and Andy Reid 4. And so I've got 1 through 4. So this is, I mean, I hate to say it, but this is kind of par for our course on where it is. I'm the most positive. And I don't want to say Jeff's the negative. I'm the highest. Jeff is not as high, and Sam fits in between. And I think that's where we usually fit. Sam, I'll just give you a chance. You react to Jeff and I's. You went first, so you go ahead and react to what Jeff and I did on our list, and what goes through your mind when you hear our 2 lists.
Yeah, I mean, there were 3 other guys that I considered, and it was 6, 7, and 9 on Jeff's list for that ahead of Andy Reid. But it is. I really did prioritize the difficulty of the era in which you did it a lot. I think a lot more than what Jeff did. What Jeff did is look at, why is the league the way it is today? That's a fine criteria too, is like, would the league look this way if not for this person being a head coach at some point in this league? Like, he has no mistakes in the argument that those guys influenced the game in the way it is today. I went with, like I said, the criteria of how difficult was it whenever you won. And the exception that I have in there is, Vince Lombardi in there. I think, first of all, Vince Lombardi, he basically leaves the Packers early because he's already sick and, has 1 more year in Washington. He won his last 9 playoff games ever. And the people who you think are good leaders in any sport have read about Vince Lombardi's leadership. Like, he set the standard for the way you lead, the way you build a culture. It's the cliche stuff that everyone talks about. He's the guy who set the standard for that. So he was sort of the exception to my rule there. Now, I know Bill Walsh wasn't. All of his stuff was right before the salary cap, and I know that Don Shula overlapped both eras. Just right about Don Shula. He might have hung on, but he still was having winning seasons. And Don Shula could be number 1 on this list because he's got the most wins ever. Like I say, it's the most games over 500 ever, if he didn't have a 2-4 Super Bowl record. And that actually is what stands out to me more than like ranking quarterbacks, is when you rank head coaches of all time, you can find the faults in all of them. Bill Belichick got fired. The Don Shula thing that Jeff mentioned. Lombardi only coached 10 seasons. Bill Walsh only coached 10 seasons. You can find the fault in all of these guys.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'm looking here. 18 plus 18 over his last 10 years. So, Shula was a little less than 10 wins per year to the hanging on. But to your point, 9-7, 10-6, 8-8. There's a 12-4. I think Don Shula gets the longevity thing, and he did it with the Colts and the Dolphins. I think two different teams. He had Hall of Fame quarterbacks. With every championship game appearance. I have no problem. Like I said, I have no problem with no names with any of the names that are on either one of these lists. I hear where you're coming from, Sam, about like the lasting legacy and how hard it was in your era. I would say this, Jeff. I'll let you go next, and then I'll chime in. What's your reaction to the two lists?
I have no problem with the list. Again, I think, as Sam said, I think it's how you approach it ends up determining the list you create. So I don't think there's anything wrong, as I said, with Andy Reid being 5th or being 10th, because you're talking about all the head coaches who've ever done it. And so to be in that elite group, I think we all agree that he's one of the best coaches in the history of this league. My argument for Andy Reid not being higher on my list, and I'd ask you guys this question, was before he came to Kansas City, was he in the conversation to ever be on this list? I think if Patrick Mahomes showed up, was he ever in this conversation?
That was actually one of my reasons for ranking him that high, is because I think he had a just shy of Hall of Fame career in Philadelphia, and then a whole separate, just Kansas City is worthy of a Hall of Fame career.
Yes. And
to me, that's what's been so impressive about Tom Brady. Tom Brady really had two separate Hall of Fame careers, two really good Hall of Fame. Andy Reid had a borderline case, a guy that at least would have been brought up in the discussion, and then a clear-cut Hall of Fame career for two different franchises, two completely different rosters. Therefore, he had, and he took over in Kansas City when it was terrible. I mean, this organization was in a terrible situation that he had to rebuild back from the ground up.
Yeah. And what I would say to that, do you think that Andy Reid, when he was in Philadelphia, was the best coach in the NFL, or one of the top three coaches in the NFL?
I didn't look at that. I'd have to go back and analyze it.
I would argue Mike Shanahan was still sticking around when Andy Reid showed up. Was still.
But I mean, I do think you can't have these discussions without talking about the quarterbacks that they had. And listen, it pains me to say this, but Donovan McNabb, because I love Donovan McNabb as a Syracuse guy. But Donovan McNabb was a product of Andy Reid, much more so than Andy Reid was a product of Donovan McNabb. He did nothing without Andy Reid. And I think the thing when you mentioned he was he on this list before he came from Philadelphia? I don't think so, but I would offer up, if we're going to do that, I don't know why it matters whether it was Philly first and then Kansas City or vice versa, but Bill Belichick's record without Tom Brady is atrocious. I mean, it is atrocious. Now, I agree. I think it's unfair to say without him, he sucks, so therefore it's all Tom Brady. Because the first three championships in New England, I agree, were more about Bill Belichick. But I think when you play that game, you have to play it for everybody. And if you play the game of what somebody was with one team or with one quarterback, except for guys like Bill Walsh, who really just did it all with Joe Montana. He doesn't even have 100 wins in his career. I agree with everything that was said about Bill Walsh. But I do think there's something to be said for the guys that for Don Shula. Like, if we're going to celebrate Don Shula for the longevity and all the winning seasons, you ding the guys that didn't hang in there, right? The guys that are like, I'm going to go refresh my battery. I'm going to go hang out at Stanford. I'm going to do whatever. That's Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh hit it and quit it. Right. And he ducked out. And so I think he's top 10, but I do think there's got to be something for coaching more than 10 years. And Andy Reid's got the grind. He's got Don Shula like longevity. He hasn't gotten to that point yet, but Don Shula and Bill Belichick like longevity, something the other guys don't, and winning and winning and winning. And then when you talk about it, he doesn't have Joe Gibbs. He didn't win a championship with Donovan McNabb, but he played for it. And he lost by one score to the guy who's number one on this list, and he got there and he played in two other conference championship games with it. And then when he got his Hall of Fame quarterback, he's hit it out of the park. But
Soren, where was Donovan McNabb drafted when he came out of college?
He was drafted number two overall.
Yeah, so he was considered no matter what you think of him as a player, he was considered a pretty good talent. So Andy Reid had two top 10 picks playing quarterback throughout his career.
There's no doubt, but he's also won with Mike Moore, and he won. And I think it's the later playoff where he takes a out of prison Mike Vick and goes back to the playoffs. He takes Jeff Garcia and goes to the playoffs. He won games with a lot of other quarterbacks, not for long periods of time, and that's why I've got Joe Gibbs ahead of him. right? And so because I think what Joe Gibbs did with the quarterbacks he had was more, but just where you're drafted doesn't tell everything, or somebody should be in the Hall of Fame because Tim Couch went 1-1. I mean, Donovan McNabb at 32 years old fell off a cliff when he went to coach for the guy you brought up, Mike Shanahan. He sucked with Mike Shanahan.
Yeah, but that's also Russell Wilson was a great quarterback before he got older. There's a lot of
but at 32, we're not talking about at 38.
Well, we're talking about a different style of quarterback, right? We've talked about just even with Mahomes, what happens when you rely on your legs a lot as a quarterback, and you have to make that transition into being a different kind of quarterback. And so I think that's what happened with Donovan McNabb. What's happened with Donovan McNabb. But I would say, and again, I'm not trying to trash Andy Reid here. I'm just making the point that for me, when I think about the greatest coaches in NFL history, I think it goes beyond just, hey, did they win this many games? Did they win this many Super Bowls? I think you have to look at how what they took over, what they built.
Oh, he took over a team. He took over a team that was the worst team in football.
Yeah, and so did Chuck
immediately
Noll, and
went
so
to
did Bill Walsh. Guys,
they're the number one.
Vince Lombardi, yeah.
I mean, they literally had the number one pick that year, and not a great draft, by the way. It's not like they were rewarded with getting Peyton Manning number one overall or something of that sort.
But the point I'm making is every other coach on this. If that's a qualifier, then it should matter for every other coach on the list. Like, what's the separator for Andy Reid? That's what I don't see.
To me, the separator is that he has two incredible resumes that on their own hold up. The resume in Philly is terrific. I mean, overall resume is, he went to 4 straight conference championships, went to a Super Bowl, and then he takes over the worst program in the NFL and builds them into a dynasty. Like, that is the separator. Bill Belichick has 2 stops. The other one he got fired from, and he had a losing record in Cleveland before New England. And, Lombardi only coached at one place ever. And Lombardi, by the way, had the same quarterback for every single one of his championships.
So where does Bill Parcells rank on your list then, on your guys' list?
Bill Parcells would be a tough one. I mean, I didn't have to go as deep because we said we just ranked down to where we had Andy Reid, so I didn't have to go as far. But
because you're making a great argument for him to be high on anybody's list. On your
I mean, he went to 3 Super Bowls. He two of them were the same quarterback that really drove him to the postseason, but then he rode a second different quarterback with the Giants all the way through. It was a great accomplishment, and he got the Patriots there. But like I said, I do. There's some tough times ahead. I'm out, and I'm going to sit on the sideline for 2 years and then take another job. I ding you for that. That's where Bill Parcells gets dinged. I mean, Andy Reid's and Bill Belichick's and Don Shula's. I mean, even with Don Shula, where he could control his whole roster and guys didn't have to leave, he didn't have it near as hard as both Andy Reid and same with Chuck Noll. He had that one great core that they put together, and he rode that. That's why none of us had Chuck Noll in here, because there's really this one great core that he rode.
Well, Jeff did.
Did you know? Okay. Well, that's why 2 of us didn't. But my point to that is, like it's I think to go by. You mentioned Parcells to not take into account that, like, it looks a little tough here, I'm bailing.
Who's doing that? I don't understand.
Bill Parcells did it all the time. He left every time. It looked like it was going to get a little bumpy. And Bill Belichick
tired of doing it. I
don't think their resumes are as close as you think they are, Jeff. I mean, Andy.
I'm not saying a resume is close. I'm just saying that's a reason for Bill Parcells to be higher on the list, to be he'd be in your top 10. If that's
He wouldn't be. I mean, not in mine. I mean, Andy Reid had 16 years where he's won at least 11 games. Bill Parcells had 5. Yeah. And his win percentage all time is like 540, and Andy's is like 640. It's like 560 compared to 640 or something like that. Yeah. I understand what you're saying, Jeff. You're saying, okay, this specific criteria applies to Bill Parcells, but it's like it's this plus for Andy Reid.
Yeah, I think Andy Reid, any criteria you want to lay out there, you want to say conference championship games, he's near the top. You want to say Super Bowls, there's only 2 guys that have won more Super Bowls than him. You want to say did it on multiple teams? I don't know that anybody had bigger success at both stops, at 2 stops. Who else?
He has the best second. He has the best second.
Yes.
Stop of all time
of anybody.
And I'm not saying in order. I'm saying in ranking order. Like his second best career is in Philly, and he's got the second best. He also has the fourth most win of all time.
Yeah.
He's the second most playoff wins of all time.
And what I'm saying is the coaches I picked, they all changed the game in some way.
Well, and I don't disagree with you, and that's why
that's where I separate Andy Reid from everybody else. Everybody on the list that I gave has great accomplishments, great numbers.
He does have a good,
but they've also changed the game.
He does have a coaching tree. I mean, it's not non-existent. Now the OC stuff over the past 5 years has, stunted that, but he does have a coaching tree.
Yeah, let's take a break. I don't want to get too far behind. We'll come back and talk about how much 25 hurt Andy Reid. We'll talk about how much higher he might be able to climb on this. We'll do it after you hear from our friends at GAN. Your parking lot says a lot about your business. Cracks, potholes, faded striping, and damaged concrete can create safety concerns and leave the wrong impression with customers. GAN Asphalt and Concrete helps Kansas City businesses protect their properties with asphalt paving, seal coating, crack filling, parking lot striping, concrete work, and repairs. Their experienced crews deliver quality workmanship and dependable service on every project. Whether you need routine maintenance or a complete parking lot overhaul, GAN is ready to help you. Get started today with a free estimate at GANAsphalt.com. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. Italian Delight was the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. They sell whole pies or pizza by the slice, or enjoy their classic strombolis, calzones, and sausage rolls. Sandwich lovers, check out their lineup of hot and cold subs, the combo, the meatball, or the Philly cheesesteak, just to name a few. And don't forget the pasta. Their famous lasagna and classic chicken Alfredo always hit the spot. And if you're hungry for lunch, check out their daily lunch specials, starting at under $10. Italian Delight can even cater your next work function or party. Dine in, carry out, or delivery, it's Italian Delight. Located just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway at 8145 State Ave in KCK. Check out the menu and order online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Kansas City's own Italian Delight. How much did 25, Sam, hurt Andy Reid, do you think, in his where you've got him on here? How much did going 6-11 here late, do damage to his stature?
It wasn't a zero factor, but I think it was close to zero for me. I mean, like I said, I think that's what prompted me to say that you can find flaws in all of these guys, is because you put that question on here and I went through it and assessed it. And it's like, well, Bill Belichick had a losing record for an entire tenure with the team. Don Shula lost in the Super Bowl 4 times. Like I said, Lombardi and Walsh only coached 10 seasons. And, the stuff on Jeff's guys is because it comes in a different era where I just thought, you're literally more likely to win titles. So I mean, all these guys have flaws. None of these guys have been perfect other than Don Shula for 1 year, but to be honest, he's coached 27 years. I'm not going to pick apart one of the 27.
How much damage did it do for you, Jeff?
Not a ton. I didn't look at it like it was like some, it proved he's fraudulent in some way, or that this is, without Mahomes, you see what this team looks like. I think it was just, it was a rough year, and he had rough years in Philadelphia. I don't condemn him for the last couple of years in Philadelphia were not great either. And when he was available, I said he was the best coach the Chiefs could get, and they went and got him. And so, but Sam's right. You look at a lot of these guys on this list. Belichick. You look at Chuck Noll, the end of his run at Pittsburgh. Tom Landry obviously got fired in Dallas at the end. I mean, there's a lot. Paul Brown did not have great success after his time in Cleveland. And so all these guys, they shine bright for a certain period of time. And yeah, it's a credit to Andy that he's lasted as long as he has, because I think the job does eat you up. I don't think having longevity means you're great. I think you're able to find a way to get through that stuff. But I think that ultimately, the run he's had in Kansas City has been exceptional. I don't think anybody should, even if he has a losing season this year, I don't think it should be held against him for what he's done throughout his career.
Sam, what would you say his greatest strengths are?
I think quarterback development. I think the fact that he empowers his players, he makes players want to play for him. He embraces personality. He doesn't try and make everyone, the same person. Instead, he tries to make them on the same page. So I think that's 2. And I think 3 is more conditional, which is when it has been humming in Kansas City, there's been some creativeness. to the plays. The three of us have talked about how stale it's gotten the past 2 years, but I don't think that's the overriding theme of, since 2013 in Kansas City. And I think that is a staple of when it's going well.
Yeah. How about you? What do you think the best strengths are, Jeff?
Obviously, offensive creativity is what he's known for. I do believe that not just empowering players, he's got a great and I think he's developed this over time. He was not this way in Philadelphia. He was not as good with the players as far as letting them show their personalities and really trying to be ingratiating with them. There were a lot of fights I remember with guys and veterans there knew that once you got to a certain period of time, you were going to get run out of town because it was not, the salary cap was vital to whatever Andy wanted to do there. I think he deserves a ton of credit for the development because you think about the Travis Kelce's and the Tyreek Hills and some of the people that he's been able to mold into talents. What he did with Alex Smith, he did not have great talent in Philadelphia for a lot of years. A lot of guys there were not phenomenal. I think Brian Westbrook was a guy that I vividly remember them taking and him turning into a serious weapon. So he deserves credit for that. And so, yeah, I think those are the major ones I see with him.
Yeah, I think the ones you guys have said a number of them, the creativity, of course. And I also think his ability, sometimes his strength is his weakness, his ability to take the troubled player and get production out of him. But also I think he's got confidence that he can solve all of them, and I think that's created some problems for him along the way. But I think the part that he's great at is the off season. I mean, I think it's clear that his off season, because we have seen him, to Sam's point, it has gotten a little stale here the last couple of years, and we're going to see if he's had a great offseason now that he's finally had some time. Has it been stale because they just were going so late and they were so short, and they would wrap the season and turn right around and be at the combine, and then you're into your draft, and he just didn't have the time. Now he's had time. This is an opportunity for him where he's got the time. But I think his offseason, clearly the way that they could just continue to play. And this, I would say this of Bill Belichick as well. He clearly had a great offseason plan. But, I think Andy Reid always did a great job. For the most part, they almost always came out of the gate strong. There are a couple of years they didn't, and he was usually able to rectify it. In Kansas City, he rectified it every time except for this past year. And I think it's because he would always have a great offseason. And I'd love to see the calendar of exactly what he's doing. What is he doing in his office week 1, week 2, week 3? How does he incorporate his input into the personnel part? I think John Harbaugh took that calendar and he's made it go at Baltimore the same way. I know his coaching tree isn't as strong as Bill Walsh's, but I also think it's harder now because there's been so many influences in the league to have that. Like, is there a guy like Bill Belichick's coaching tree sucks? Like who of the guys of late have a great coach?
Sean McVay.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of guys in jobs that have had a couple wins, but how many? Mike Shanahan is probably the best one, or Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. Mike, no, I don't think anybody has a great one that's active right now.
Kyle had DeMeco Ryans. He's doing a pretty good job.
He's won playoff games, but that's what I'm saying. There's a John Harbaugh, and there's guys. I mean, Matt Nagy went to 2 playoffs with the Bears. If we're going to credit 2 playoffs for DeMeco Ryans, but I'm talking about guys.
These are all younger guys too.
Well, I know.
I think Kevin O'Connell's a better coach than you guys. We went through the coach.
Matt LaFleur's done a good job.
Yeah, he's got LaFleur. He's got O'Connell. Yeah. He's got Liam Cohen and Jacksonville.
I agree. He's got the most fingerprints everywhere. But when you talk about coaching trees, when you talk about Bill Walsh, you're talking about guys that won championships.
Well, give it time. I guess.
They didn't win it like this.
But don't wave let's give it time. Don't wave the checkered flag on the fact that all these guys are done deals, because he's also got the failed Chargers coach. He's got I'm with you. I agree with you. Nobody has a better chance to have a bigger impact right now than Sean McVay. Nobody. But let's let him do it before we credit him with a great coaching tree. I'm just saying, great ingredients, just not there yet. That's all I would say. What are the biggest weaknesses?
What are we talking about right now? The coach lost track. Yeah. So we're talking about the coaching tree, Andy's coaching tree.
We were talking about. I said who does have a great coaching tree that's in the game right now is what I asked.
Yeah.
What weaknesses for Andy Reid? What are they, Sam?
Loyal. I think he's loyal to a fault. I think he sticks. I mean, you mentioned the second chances with players. He does that to a fault, too. I mean, we're covering too many of these stories, and I don't know what it is from market to market. It certainly feels like we're covering too many of these stories, but also that applies to his assistant coaches too. I mean, if he had moved on from Bob Sutton a year earlier, he might have another Super Bowl. If he had moved on from Alex Smith a year before that, when the Chiefs had lost 6 out of 7 games and lost 3 when they gave up like 19-10 and like 9 points in those 3 games and lost 6 out of 7, he might have another playoff run in him. And he finally made coaching staff changes this year. And Stren, you were there with me at training camp yesterday morning, when Nico Remigio's talk about Chad O'Shea as an assistant coach was unbelievable. Or he was like, it's great to have a mature voice in the room. Like, this is a player saying there needed to be a change, and we all knew there needed to be a change. Yeah. So I think loyalty to a fault is his biggest weakness.
Yeah. How about you, Jeff?
Before I get into weaknesses, there was one more strength I forgot to mention with him, and that he is very open to different ideas and the willingness to go into places like when he brought the pistol offense here and the Chris Alt and obviously looking at high school plays and so college plays. He's mined a lot of different places to find different ways to affect the game.
Not arrogant, I think. Is like that requires some humility.
Yeah. But I also think that might be a weakness now, because I think that there aren't many places to go to find that stuff. And there's a lot more people who are doing that. And so I think he's relied so much on being able to outplan and outprepare and out-scheme people that he has not been willing to accept that you need playmakers to win in this game at this era that we're in now, that it's not just about how creative you can get and how much you can get on a whiteboard and draw up, that you need to have some guys who can go out and get it done. And I think he's relied on a lot of the same types of players he won with in Philadelphia and he won with early here, or just believing that he could take some guys and turn them into Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. And you roll that dice too often and you're going to end up crapping out. And I think that's where he is right now. I think he's got to understand how to reinvent himself in a different way. And I think it's going to be harder because he's so used to always thinking he can just outthink people.
I think the loyalty thing, I do think he tends to want to give talent to everybody, to the other side of the ball too much and not put it on the offense, and think that whether it's his own arrogance that I'll scheme beyond it, or it's just like, I'm always going to help the other guy out. Like, there's the big picture of the football. I would say that loyalty, and I would just, I think that's the way Sam put it. And I would describe it in a different way, but I think at essence, that's what it is. And it makes him a better human being, but it makes him a worse coach. And that is, he cares about the people more. Like you can't deny that he cares about people and that he affects people. And when you hear the players that have been with him for a long time talk about him, they all revere him. When you hear the coaches that have been around him for a while, they all revere him. We saw when they won that championship in 2019, how seemingly the entire league was so thrilled that Andy Reid won it. He clearly has made a positive impact. He cares about people, but I think he cares about people more than he cares about winning, which, like I said, makes him a better human being. But Bob Sutton should have been fired. I mean, I think there are decisions that get made that he's going to try. I'll put it on myself and I'll raise it up and we'll bring this guy along. Because Connor Embry, to speak about the wide receiver coach, I understand, and I think it's a very valid point, that they went so deep into the seasons that all the really great polished, Chad O'Shea would not have been available. He was available the first week that the hiring was around, and the Chiefs were in the hiring mode, and that's why they got him. And they haven't been in that mode for a long time. And so that is a legitimate excuse for why they didn't do it. But they were at a point with the wide receiver position where Embry needed to go, no matter who you got. You could have grabbed a wide receiver coach in college and been in better shape. That was, I mean, I'm with Sam. It was crystal clear what Nico Remigio was saying. And it's exactly what we've all been seeing. And he wouldn't do it because he was a friend. He was a friend's son. I'll make it work. I'll overcome it. And he didn't put the football team first. He put the people first. He didn't put the winning first. I don't want to say the football team. He didn't put the winning first. And, Bill Belichick always put the winning first. And a lot of people don't like Bill Belichick, right? Yeah. But if you wanted to win games, it's better to put the winning first.
Yeah, but see, I would push back. I think he thought he could win with that. That's the arrogance I'm talking about, the ego, the sense of like, I don't need to have all these great receiver coaches. I got a guy who can come in, we'll show him the ropes, he'll grow with us, and he'll benefit. And some of this is just the ends. It's kind of, we're getting in the weeds of the business, but this is the downside of Andy Reid coaching so long, because when you're Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan, you're running in circles where you're seeing young, hot coaches coming up, and you can identify that guy. I like the way that guy handles himself. I like what this guy's doing over here. You can go find the next Matt LaFleur or Kevin O'Connell, whoever, because you're hanging out with these guys. When you're 60+ years old, you're not in those same circles.
He's not going to St. Elmo's during the
no.
combine and hanging out till 1 a.m.
That's right. That's right. He's not doing all that. Yeah, exactly. You saw when he left Taylor Swift Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift's wedding. He was out the first one out the door.
I did not notice that.
I would add that he's got to know his limitations. Like, that's going to define. We're going to get to what he can do to move up, but he's got to know his limitations. And right now, I don't think he has, because I think he's got to adjust and shift gears and become more of a CEO. And I'm not sure he's capable of doing that. Last part before we break here, how far can Andy Reid move up the list in your mind, Sam? How much, based on the fact that he's 68 years old right now, the time he's got left, the team he's got left? On your list, he's number 5. What do you think is reasonable that he could actually move up on your list?
I think he actually could get to 2 if you're talking about just pure possibility, because he's under contract through 2029. So I think it's at least a possibility that he coaches for 4 years. And let's say he wins 2 Super Bowls during those 4 years. I mean, I think it's possible that we'd be talking about him at number 2. He'd have the second most Super Bowl wins of all time. He'd be ahead of Belichick in all-time wins, and the playoff wins. So would he be number 1 in playoff wins in that case? I mean, where is
yes, because he's had 2 less seasons in the league than Belichick right now, and on playoff wins, Bill Belichick's number 1 with 31, and he's got 28. So in your scenario, there's at least 6 more playoff wins there.
I mean, he actually, you could even argue, has what? I mean, his odds of becoming the all-time playoff wins is probably better than 50-50. You'd probably have to get worse than even money on that. So I think it's possible he gets to 2.
Okay. How high do you think he can go, Jeff?
On my list, I think he can get past. Let me get my list back up. I think he can get, if he gets a couple more championships, he'd go past Landry. He'd go past Gibbs and Noel. He'd get to 7 on my list, which I don't think. But
with 5 Super Bowls, that's all the
a 5-3 record, 8
George
conference
had 6 championships. Paul Brown had 7 championships. I know you just look at the Super Bowls.
Paul Brown had like
championships.
5 of his championships in the AAFC.
Paul Brown had 7 championships. Yeah. You know how many playoff games he won? 9. 9.
Well, again,
he went right to the championship game.
You think Paul Brown's a worse coach than Andy Reid?
I think the eras are so far apart.
I'm not going to pretend that I know Paul Brown really well.
I've read 2 different one biography on Paul Brown and another book that is a lot about coaching, and Paul Brown's in it. I feel like I do know a lot about Paul Brown. I think he was a tremendous coach. I think your term about innovator, his contributions to the game are amazing, but he was the AAFC.
I understand.
Slow your roll on the 7 times.
I'm just saying that, like, if we're going to start talking about championships,
let's get Jim Moore. Let's get Jim Moore on the list for his 2 USFL titles.
They matter in every year.
I mean, Jeff, he had the most playoff wins ever, and he'd be in that scenario with 2 Super Bowls. He had the most playoff wins ever, and probably second or third most wins ever. I mean, he'd at least be like tapping on the door.
Maybe knock on the door, yeah. But I'm saying if we're talking about a Mount Rushmore, I don't see any scenario where Andy Reid's face is moving on there over the guy that I just mentioned.
Wow.
Not over Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, Vince Lombardi, Don Shula, Paul Brown, or George House.
He'd have 4 times as many wins as Bill Walsh, and he'd have, 2 more championships. I think it's preposterous to think he can't get by.
I'm just saying, if you poll people who cover the NFL where Andy would fall, I know we're here in Kansas City, but you poll people in the NFL, he would probably end up where I am.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, first of all, I agree that Soren and I have him higher than I think national people would. But the hypothetical that you mentioned of him winning 2 more Super Bowls, no way people aren't putting him in their top 5 at that point.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that. They're not going to win 2 Super Bowls. That's not happening. Yeah,
and I think that's a more accurate way to describe your position, because you don't think he's going to. I mean, I think you think he's on the downslope. We'll get to that in a minute. And he's not going to bounce back, and there's not going to be any more championships. And that I hear where you're coming from a lot more. Like the scenario we painted where if he wins 2 more championships, I think he's number 2 with a bullet. With a bullet. I think it's undisputed number 2 if he wins 2 more championships because of the most playoff wins. He would have I think he would go by Shula, wouldn't he, in that scenario for just total wins?
Shula's number 1 in total wins. Belichick's 3. That's who he's behind next.
Yeah, but I'm saying in the scenario,
he's 24 behind Belichick. He's 49 behind Shula.
49, and so if he in that scenario, if he wins 2 more Super Bowls, there's probably at least a 14 and a 12. So that's 26. If he's got 2 other, I'm like, he could get to where he's right at Shula. He'd have more combined wins. He'd have the most playoff wins. He'd have the second most Super Bowls.
He's 40. He's 40 behind him in combined wins. So if you win 2 Super Bowls, you might be winning more like 14, 15 games.
Do you guys think that's going to happen?
No, but I think it's reasonable to allow for the possibility that a guy who has made 5 of the last 8 Super Bowls gets back to a couple more. It's at least possible.
I don't see it.
But it is.
I'm not saying I'm
1% chance. I'll give it 1% chance.
Yeah, I get where Jeff's coming from. I mean, when we're talking about, we're saying what can he get to? Well, when you say what he can get to, you're going to be tempered based upon what you think is reality. And I think the reality is, and there's a lot of history behind it, that at 68 years old, he's a declining entity. I think that's possible. I think that's one of the fun talking points. Let's break here real quick. We'll hear from our friends at Italian Delight, and then we'll talk about where we think he's ultimately going to end up and how important this 26th season is for Andy Reid. Italian Delight was the first restaurant to bring true New York-style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago. They sell whole pies or pizza by the slice, or enjoy their classic strombolis, calzones, and sausage rolls. Sandwich lovers, check out their lineup of hot and cold subs, the combo, the meatball, or the Philly cheesesteak, just to name a few. And don't forget the pasta. Their famous lasagna and classic chicken Alfredo always hit the spot. If you're hungry for lunch, check out their daily lunch specials, starting at under $10. Italian Delight can even cater your next work function or party. Dine in, carry out, or delivery, it's Italian Delight. Located just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway at 8145 State Ave in KCK. Check out the menu and order online at ItalianDelightKS.com. Kansas City's own Italian Delight. If your property needs asphalt or concrete work, Gann Asphalt and Concrete is ready to help you. From parking lots and drive lanes to sidewalks, curbs, patching, seal coating, crack filling, and repairs. Their experienced crews handle projects of all sizes throughout the entire Kansas City metro. Whether you're fixing problem areas or planning a larger paving project, Gann focuses on quality workmanship and dependable service from start to finish. No matter what shape your pavement is in today, they can help improve it. Request a free estimate and learn more at GannAsphalt.com. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lots. All right, let's talk about how important this 26th season is for his place in history. He's going to have to adjust what he's doing, right? We've mentioned that it's got a little scale, so he's going to have to adapt and overcome what have become obstacles that he's had a problem with over the last couple of years offensively. How important is getting that done here to 26 to what his legacy is going to be, Sam?
I think it has the possibility to advance it more than it has the possibility to hurt it because of what you mentioned. It requires him innovating at 68 years old, and you don't see 68-year-old coaches change the way that they like to do things. And I actually think it's beyond his legacy is the impact of this season. I think it's also his own enjoyment of the job. I mean, Andy Reid was 54 when he left Philly, and he still had hunger after going 4-12 and then 8-8. He'll be 68. If it's 6-11 and then 6-11, all the talk is going to be about what the Chiefs should do. I'd flip it around and say, would he want to continue? And I ask that genuinely. If he's 68 years old and goes 6-11 and 6-11, and it looks similar to the way it did last year, he talks every year about the fact he still loves it. Would he still love it at the same level if that's the case?
What do you think? How important is 26, Jeff?
Again, I don't think it changes his legacy, especially not in this town. I think what he's done here is obviously light years beyond what anybody thought would happen when he showed up. So he's already got a statue coming here. And even within Philadelphia, like the things he did there, they had not, outside of Dick Vermeil and Buddy Ryan for a little bit of time, had not had that kind of success. You have to go back to the 60s, to find that kind of, that kind of performances from those kind of teams. So I think he's going to be okay. Now, the question is, I think it's going to be harder for the Chiefs because Andy Reid seems like he would have a hard time leaving if he had another, below 500 season. And now all of a sudden Clark Hunt's got to decide, am I taking the keys away from this guy now and give them to somebody else? Because I do feel like it's not out of the question that he could have a decline like a Mike Shanahan had, or Mike Holmgren, even though he got Seattle back to Super Bowl, was not the same kind of coach he was early in Green Bay. I mean, it's a hard job, and it's hard to keep reinventing yourself. And at some point, the time runs out for everybody. And so I do think it's important for him in terms of building the confidence that this thing can continue and get back on track. But I don't think as far as his legacy goes, it's going to hurt him that much.
If he has a rough year this year, let me tell you the one thing that I believe Clark Hunt has to do, not listen to a word that Andy Reid has to say to him about where the football team is going. Like when he goes to make his decision, he needs to talk to the people around Andy Reid and hear what they're saying about how Andy's doing and how things are going. And he needs to seek outside counsel, because I'm going to tell you what Andy Reid is going to do, because he's a competitor and he doesn't quit. And he is going to say the same thing. I remember Ned Yost going, well, I want to get this thing back up and hand it to somebody in a good position. He didn't. It still sucked. He couldn't turn it around for the Royals. I listened to Jim Boeheim for years talk about how he just wanted to get the program back up to where it was, and then he'd hand it off to somebody. He didn't, because he couldn't do it. The game was passing him by, and Andy Reid won't know. You do not know. I'm sure Bill Belichick either knew he couldn't do it and was just trying to get to Don Shula's total win record, or he too thought it was. The guy to ask will not be Andy Reid. Tom Landry did not. Everybody thought, because Tom Landry was pissed that he got fired in Dallas. He needed to be fired in Dallas. I will tell you that is utterly critical to the future of Andy Reid if he is going to add to his resume. I agree. If he goes 6-11, his career ended about the time Don Shula was done at 65. Now, everybody, our lifespans get longer and guys work later. And so, this is probably comparable to about towards the end of Don Shula's career. I think 70 is probably the new 60 and so on and so forth. But it is, if he's going to add to his resume, this year is critical. He must win. He must be in the postseason. The offense must look good. Or he needs to have a blueprint on how he's going to completely shift to being a CEO and talk about what bright offensive mind he's going to bring in, how he's going to give the keys to him, and how he's going to handle things differently. Because just doing it the way he's been doing it is a recipe for utter failure. If he goes 6-11, there's no chance of him turning it around. And if he, first of all, I hope he doesn't go 6-11 because I'm a Chiefs fan. But if he does, I will bet that against anybody. And if Andy Reid then wins 4 Super Bowls in a row, I will be stunned. But I don't think there's any chance. I think 26 is utterly critical. I do think he's capable of shifting his scheme. I mean, I think he seems. In training camp, I'm glad to see him now, because at the end of the year, he's so worn down. And on Mondays, I think he's just so tired after being up so late or not even sleeping. It's good to see him invigorated. I'm like, okay, he's got energy and he's got it going. But I do worry that 17 games and into the postseason is the tank on empty and they won't be able to get there. He's got to prove that he's figured out a way to keep himself energized and sharp and on top of it, because I don't think he's been there late in the year the last couple of years, and 26 is going to show us that. So I think it's absolutely critical for whether or not he's going to add to his career. What do we think the rest of his career is going to look like, and where are you going to ultimately end up ranking him, Sam, when it's all said and done?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the answer to that question is going to completely change based on how this year goes. Because if he does go 6-11, like I said, I think there's more than one possibility of him exiting. It's not because the Chiefs ask him to, but it's also because that's where his mind could go as well. And if he gets back to a Super Bowl, the only way he gets back to a Super Bowl is if he does change. And because his personnel demands, it's not just because the game has passed him by or anything of that. His personnel demands that he changes because he doesn't have the weapons to throw the ball to. His tight end is 36 years old. His number one wide receiver's played 12 games in the last 2 years, And, it's taken a bit this training camp to get his legs under him. Like, he's going to have to be different. If he's capable of doing that, I think he's capable of finishing out his 4 years of his contract, especially one that pays him $20 million a year. And then I think you ask yourself the question of how close is he to Don Shula? And is that a reason to go one more year? But I think on average, I just think the safest bet I'm going to say is, 2 to 3 more years.
Okay. And he finishes where on your list?
I think, look, let me
Does he stay right at 5?
I'll say 4.
He gets by Bill Walsh. Okay. Jeff, what do you think the finish of his career is going to look like from here moving forward? Where do you think he'll ultimately rank?
I don't want to draw comparisons, but when you were talking about, some of the way coaches end up, like most coaches end up the way Mike Shanahan ended up, or John Gruden,
or Bill Belichick,
whoever, Tom Landry. They end up, like I said, they don't know when it's time. They can't see it coming.
Pete Carroll.
Yeah. And so all the things that I think we've seen all of Andy's pitches, and I don't think he's got a new pitch in him. And I think part of the problem he has is that he's dealing with the consequences of the way this roster has been built while they were riding high, and that the cupboard is so bare right now that to think he's going to be contending for Super Bowls or winning Super Bowls for me is just not realistic the next 4 years. And so I think this year will be a bit of a grind. I think that they might end up being a playoff team that gets pulled. They might look a lot like Pittsburgh Steelers the last few years, a team that can win 9, 8, 9, 10 games, give you some hope, and then the reality is they don't have enough weapons to keep up, because the game now is so much about how the Rams are doing it, or the Eagles, whoever else. A lot of people are making bold moves, acquiring talent, trying to win in 2-3 year periods, and the Chiefs are playing the long game with Mahomes, which you're supposed to do with a generational quarterback. But every couple of years, there's going to be a team like the Rams showing up, like the Eagles a couple of years ago, who's going to be just better. And within their own conference, there's better coaches. So I think that it's not going to be any championships anymore happening in Kansas City. And as far as where he ranks, I think he'll get past Landry on my list. I give guys like Chuck Noll credit for, obviously it wasn't as deep of a league, but you were dealing with a lot of super teams. And so you had to beat the Cowboys. You had to beat the Dolphins. You had to beat the Raiders. I just did a story on the Raiders celebrating their 50th championship, and somebody made a great point. It's like they only won one championship in the 70s. It's because they kept getting beat by the Dolphins and the Chiefs and the Jets,
Steelers. The Steelers really
were loaded up.
Yeah,
so to go 4-0 in the Super Bowl in the 70s. You got some stuff done.
That's a good point.
Yeah, the Raiders. John Madden kept running into the Steelers. I mean, I did a thing on one of my "There Can Be Only One" questions yesterday was about coaches with 600 win percentages, and we were like, John Madden's got to be he's got a great regular season, but he's actually only 9-7 in the playoffs because the Steelers kept punching him in the face. And so you're right. There were that was a very. There were super teams because if you had the talent right, you didn't lose anybody. There was no free agency. So it was kind of tough up there at the top for sure. Listen, I'll answer my own question, and I will say this. I think ultimately for me, he's probably going to rank I think he's probably going to rank 3 or 2. I think it's going to look like the latter years of Don Shula. I think there's 10-7, 11-6. There might be one more 12-5 or 13-4 that's mixed in there, but it'll be somewhat schedule driven. They'll still kind of be, they really in a lot of metrics. The last 2 years were kind of the same team. In 1 year, they were 14-3, and 1 year they were 6-11. They just happened to win all the close games, then they lost all the close games. I mean, I think he's going to be more in that
15-2.
Yeah, 15-2. Excuse me. Yeah, 15-2. So I don't want to say this. I wish I could tell you that. Nope, he's going to. I hope he listened to. I'll say this. I hope he listened to Dick Vermeil. And I know Dick Vermeil's tenure with the Chiefs is not remembered as one of the great tenures of all time. But between the Eagles and the Rams, and within the Rams, Dick Vermeil changed. He went back to the Rams and tried to do it like he did with the Eagles. And very quickly, I'm sure under the fear of getting fired after 2 very disappointing years, he said, okay, I can't be my own head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback coach, special teams coach. He did all those jobs with the Eagles. And he'd shed some of them. He knew he couldn't be special teams coach and all that. But he was still trying to call his own offense. And he said, I got to get Mike Martz in here. I got to get somebody in here who's got a bright offensive mind. Mike Martz came in, it clicked. They had talent.
Mike Martz and Marshall Faulk and
Yeah.
Torrey Holt.
Yeah, no, but they had some of that talent before Martz was there. They weren't winning, right? Because Dick Vermeil was trying to do too much. I've had this conversation with Dick, and I know Dick talks to Andy Reid, and I haven't talked to Dick for 5 or 6 years for at a Super Bowl. It's been a while, so I don't know, how much football he's still watching or talking, or whether or not talking to him would do any good right now with Andy Reid, because he may not pay attention to any of the games. But there was a time that I hope he heard what Dick Vermeil had to say about how his career adjusted, because Dick Vermeil had too much of the loyalty, and if he'd fired Greg Robinson, I think he could have made a run once or twice here in Kansas City. He had an offense that was good enough, but the defensive scheme sucked. It was awful. It was terrible. It was a killer. If Andy Reid heard that message and the 6-11 scared him enough, and he makes the adjustments he needs to make, then I think there can be a better run than what I predict. But my prediction is we're on the downslope of his career. There'll be a couple of more playoffs, maybe even 3 more, but likely, and maybe a conference championship, maybe a Super Bowl loss, in there.
You're saying maybe. Do you believe that?
I said maybe. No, I don't believe it, or I wouldn't have put maybe in front of it. I think it's clear what I think. I think in all likelihood, but I don't know that I'm ready to hand it to the Chargers or Broncos or even the Patriots and say, boy, you got to go through that team now. I don't know that there's a team you got to go through. So I think they're just kind of in the mix. And if you're in the mix and you have Patrick Mahomes, you got a pretty good chance. So I think there's probably another Super Bowl loss if he goes 4 years. And I think there's probably 3 playoffs out of 4 years. If I'm wrong, 2 out of 4, with a couple of disappointing finishes to it. But I think the totals will be big enough that he will finish at 2 or 3 when it's all said and done. That's what I think.
Jeff, let's say he coaches 4 years. What's the percentage chance you think he gets to a Super Bowl, and the percentage chance you think he wins a Super Bowl in the next 4 years?
10%.
10% get there?
10% get there, I think.
How much win? 5?
10% win. Maybe 10% win.
10%.
You're asking.
Well, it has to be low.
The group that you guys see in training camp, you've seen in training camp, you're asking that group in 3-4 years to be the foundation of that type of.
I don't. First of all, I don't think 10% is that low for a coach to have a chance of winning a Super Bowl over
1 in 32 league.
Over the next 4 years. I guess I'd put it higher than that, but
based on what? Based on what? Not based on what they've done. Based on what they have right now.
You got the best player in the world at the most important position in the world.
That's the reason.
That gives you a shot.
Yeah.
That gives you a shot. I also think that they're going to flush part of the cap. Like, I will tell you that I do think one of the reasons to be pessimistic is I do think the signing of Nick Bolton, the signing of Trey Smith, along with another contract for Chris Jones, is kind of a better version, but still a version of what he did, where he tried to throw all kinds of free agents at it at the end in Philadelphia, and it burned and crashed. Like, he was at his best, to your point about, he gets sideways with veterans and they were gone. That's when he was at his best. Yep. He was turning and burning the roster, bringing in hungry people, and never getting his cap over the top. And they're stretched. They're thin right now. I still look at the roster, and I went through it today, and I've got 10 spots that I think are open, and that's too many. Your roster should be more about 10 spots where I think somebody's trying to win the job, and it should be more about the 5 guys I got to figure out to cut. And we talked about that earlier with the rosters, and that hasn't changed. If they're healthy, they can be pretty good this year, but if they start taking on injuries, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for sure. All right, there it is. We've broken it down. That's where Andy Reid is. Remember, if you need any help when it comes to your parking lots, Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's best. For more than 30 years, they've been solving parking lot problems. Every project comes with a written warranty. Gann Asphalt and Concrete has everything that you need when it comes to seal coating, crack filling, parking lot striping, concrete work, repairs, asphalt paving. Plus that seal coating, I know it doesn't feel like it, but it's going to start turning cold here before long, or at least cooler. You're not going to be able to get that done. So get on the schedule right now. Go to GannAsphalt.com. And our friends at Italian Delight, first to bring true New York style pizza to Kansas City almost 50 years ago, home of the lunch specials, starting at under $10. Just 3 minutes east of Kansas Speedway, 8145 State Ave. You can find them online at ItalianDelightKS.com. For Jeff Chadiha, Sam McDowell, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us.